Hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Kelly here with Esri, and I'd like to welcome you and thank you for joining us on our webinar today. So today we're going to be discussing visualizing the uncertain future with GIS. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Mark Saigon to get us started with the presentation today.
Thanks, Kelly. My name is Mark Saigon. I'm the Director of National Mapping Solutions here at Esri. I've been involved in the mapping and geospatial industry for over 35 years. And I'm joined by my colleague, Kelly Moreno Arroyo. Kelly, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you, Mark. So my name is Kelly. I am a marketing specialist here with Industry Solutions, and I support our national mapping and official statistics teams.
Great, thanks, Kelly. And you'll be hearing more from Kelly later on today. Today we're going to be covering challenges in crises like the disasters or the current health crisis that we're in, visualizing the uncertain future with GIS, as Kelly mentioned. We'll be looking at business and government continuity and sustainability in these challenging times, and how you can get started with some of the solutions that we're going to be showing you today. And we're going to have time at the end for questions and answers. So please put your questions in, as Kelly mentioned, in the question interface on the GoToWebinar. And we'll get to as many of those as possible. And if not, we will follow up later and get you answers. So our world is increasingly challenged with security, social conflict, economic issues, environmental challenges, and of course the health crises that we're all in and experiencing today. Government geospatial authorities are rising to these challenges. They're helping us to know what we need and how to understand what we're dealing with and make better decisions. They're really enabling us to collaborate and provide actionable information for decision makers. Most of these geospatial organizations have turned to Geographic Information Systems, or GIS, to help provide us the process and a framework for not only creating this knowledge that we need, but also applying it widely. As geospatial authorities, we measure and we visualize and we map. We also analyze that information, and we allow others to then plan and design based on that information to make better decisions. And as the originator of the TED Talks, Richard Saul Wurman often says, understanding precedes action. Our maps and our geographic data are crucial to understanding our current environment and our current situations. It provides context and actionable information to decision makers. And it allows us to deliver trusted, authoritative information that's really needed in these uncertain times. We're all facing disasters happening all around the world. Some of it's caused by climate, others just naturally occurring. For example, in the Asia-Pacific region, where many of you are, you've been experiencing monsoons and cyclones that are causing flooding with water that is sometimes as much as 10 meters deep. Just looking at the map of the Amazon fires, we can see that it's damaging and wiping out landscapes. We saw that in a very big way last year. And the same's been happening in Australia and in the Western United States and in Southern Europe. There's just this past summer. And the work of GIS professionals like you is helping us to respond to these disasters. So we're going to go and show you quite a few apps and dashboards and other geospatial tools. But before we do that, I'd like to introduce you to something called the crisis management life cycle. Every crisis, whether it's natural or made by people, happens somewhere. Location is an important element to understanding how to respond as I go around this cycle here, lower left, how we respond, how we recover, how we raise awareness, and ultimately prevention and preparedness to help mitigate the next crisis that's coming. And that unfortunately will inevitably come. So when the next crisis does come, we're frequently surprised, but once we work through the shock and the grief cycle, we recognize that we must secure our businesses, our governments, and most importantly, our loved ones, which are supported by that economic business and that good governance. If our vision is to have resilient businesses and effective government response, and to be prepared for the next crisis, then our goal must be to provide location intelligence across all phases of this crisis management life cycle to enable us to make the best decisions possible. The crisis management life cycle consists of these 5 areas, and in some ways, maybe we don't start at response. Maybe we start at awareness so we can prepare for the next crisis. We start with awareness, go to prevention, then preparation, so we're ready for the response and the recovery in that next crisis that comes. Each phase in the life cycle requires understanding and decisions that can benefit from location intelligence. And it's important to understand that the cycle repeats itself in a continuous loop. This same crisis management life cycle can be applied to any crisis, certainly in the health crisis like COVID, which we're going to be showing examples from throughout here, but also hurricanes, falling oil prices, unemployment, or even outbreak in social unrest, just to name a few. The life cycle and the process is the same and will always repeat, giving the opportunity to learn, improve, and better prepare for the next crisis. And if we choose, then we can take advantage of that, and we can use the term crisis in many ways. It could be a minor crisis, like a business decision on when to locate and where to locate services for the evolving needs, or how to react when a supply chain is threatened. Not every crisis involves the whole world, but every crisis, every decision, whether small or large, can benefit from location intelligence through Geographic Information Systems, or GIS. So location intelligence can be realized by applying strategy to focus on these 5 phases for the crisis management life cycle. So crisis response users need rapid support and deployment for configuration of dashboards and things like the coronavirus response hubs, which we'll show in a little bit, and enabling us to better communicate across communities. During recovery, government and business continuity is critically important to public safety and trust and economic sustainability. Users need configurable solutions to help monitor things like their facilities or their workforce. We're going to show some of these solutions for recovery here in a minute. Situational awareness is next on this cycle, and as communities reopen, they will need sustainable awareness, monitoring on cases and testing and community indicators. And we're going to have to modify the way we do business. We know that. We know that governments, business, and people, just everyday citizens, will be implementing new ways of thinking, new systems to better prevent the spread of coronaviruses in the future. And we'll also be looking at new solutions to be more efficient and safe in any type of a disaster as we look at how we define our new normal. For example, with field workers, there will be increased need for field automation and tracking capabilities. To keep employees safe, organizations will be looking for indoor mapping solutions to help plan capacities and 2-meter distances in offices. And how do we better track data for possible COVID-19 exposures or other coronaviruses in the future? With reduced budgets, organizations will be looking for systems that generate immediate ROI and help them to be more efficient and their workforce is more safe. This will be a continuation of the previous life cycles that I talked about. And it's not just in a return to the workplace, but returning to a workplace that may look very different. And organizations will be looking for systems that can make them successful in this new business and government landscape. And lastly, that crisis readiness. In order to prepare for the next crisis response, organizations are going to be looking to create a higher level of operational readiness. Corona-19 has impacted everyone in every organization in some manner, or required new approaches. And organizations will desire better systems to mobilize their workforces and provide access to critical data on-premise and in the cloud, and be prepared for continuity of operations across all crisis response operations. Many organizations in the world were caught unprepared for COVID-19, and we want to learn from these lessons. So I'm assuming that you're familiar with this website, this hub. I think most people are. It's the world famous Johns Hopkins University dashboard. And when we at Esri first came into contact with this dashboard, it was January 23rd of last year, after seeing a tweet from the Johns Hopkins University team. And the whole team at Esri went out and looked at it and got excited about it. We were really impressed with the clarity of the message, taking very complex real-time data that was happening very quickly, dynamically, and synthesizing it into a dashboard that was very easy for people to understand. And we weren't the only ones here at Esri. The dashboard had tremendous uptake. We soon learned that world leaders were also monitoring this dashboard and depending on it to make informed decisions. It quickly became a backdrop in operations centers around the world, from the US Health and Human Services Secretary's Operations Center to emergency response meetings in Germany, coronavirus briefings in Italy, and in Ireland, just among a few to mention. The influence of this dashboard when respected journalists started writing about it was amazing. The coverage was extensive. We see some notable examples here from the New York Times and the British broadcasting system, BBC World News. And of course, our own Esri website used it for our landing page to focus on COVID-19 resources, which I'll talk about later, that you can use as a do-it-yourself resource. And we saw it in many stories. This dashboard was featured on the National Public Radio here in the United States. It was featured in Science, in the Nature Index, and the Wall Street Journal, and many other publications. And my colleague, Dr. Esri Garrity, who was a public health officer and is Esri's chief medical officer, she was even invited to speak on the dashboard and the mapping of the coronavirus on CNBC News here in the US and around the world. So let's look at this crisis management life cycle that I put up in the right-hand corner here in the context of the current crisis that we're all going through. The COVID-19 dashboard by the Johns Hopkins University, and it's their Center for Systems, Science, and Engineering, and it's a familiar sight to us. Using this dashboard and the crisis management life cycle in the upper right, I want to start with awareness and use the life cycle, the crisis life cycle, to talk about how we look at this in the context of the COVID-19 dashboard. The awareness was raised very quickly as the world watched the Johns Hopkins dashboard and watched how the virus spread. And then many communities were unable to prevent that disease spread, and not everyone was well prepared for this pandemic. And that, was inevitable that it was going to spread. And as a result, the world was thrown into a rapid response. And the world struggles to recover even now. And the cycle continues. And we're now in what many think is the third, and we may be going into a fourth iteration of this. So we know this cycle continues, and we need to learn from it. And so we've got to raise the level of awareness in this challenging situation, and we've got to continue to prevent and prepare for what is likely subsequent waves of this, which may go into 2022 or even 2023. So I want to switch and show you just a quick little demo of what I'm talking about. Any of you can go to the COVID website and explore it for yourself. But I think some people miss some of the nuances in this very simple but very rich information. You can see, first of all, there is a dynamic map. And since we're primarily, our audience today is Asia Pacific, I'm going to zoom into that, into your region. And we can look more closely and explore the information there. Also, many people look at the global cases, but they don't realize that you can actually go down to administrative level 1. You can go to individual countries. In some countries, you can even go down into individual states or provinces. So you can set the level of granularity that you want to look at. If I look at over here at the global deaths, I can pop that window out and start to look at it. I can close it back up so I can get the bigger context. I can look at global deaths, and I can look at global recovered. I can also look at specifically at U.S. deaths and U.S. recoveries. I think this lower right one is overlooked sometimes. I'm going to pop that out, and let's explore that a little more. Here we see the daily cases, and you can look at any specific day, and we can see there's some noise there, but you can see the trend. And we can also take a look at the cumulative cases. What does that trend look like? What are the daily deaths? And what are the cumulative deaths? What's that look like? And in some cases, for you statisticians, we may want to look at it logarithmically. So I think that if you go back and think about looking at the COVID-19 dashboard by Johns Hopkins University, and you simply just need to type that in because it automatically takes you there, I think you'll find there's a lot of rich information here, and there's a lot of metadata. I often get a question about where does this data come from? You can see I've revealed some of it down here. And what's interesting is that dashboard is actually part of a much richer dashboard that Johns Hopkins has, and you can get even more information and data, for instance, data in motions and tracking. And these resources are all freely available. This is all open source information that Johns Hopkins provides to you. And Johns Hopkins uses a variety of resources and data. So I invite you to look at that metadata that I mentioned. I'm gonna pop back into my, sorry, I'm playing with Windows here. I need to pop back into my presentation. I apologize for that. And here we go. And I'm going to turn it over to Kelly now to get some feedback from all of you. This is the opportunity to hear from you. And Kelly's got a couple questions. We invite you to participate here. Kelly?
Okay, thanks, Mark. How many times has the Johns Hopkins University Hub been viewed over the last year? So it looks like for the most part, we have a split here between 120 million and 1.2 billion. So we have 33% of you guys voted for those two answers, with 1.2 trillion close behind and 12 million last. So the actual answer to this is 1.2 trillion. That's 1.2 trillion views that the Johns Hopkins University Hub has been viewed over the last year. So it's a really powerful example of what bringing authoritative information to for public use and then visualizing it in an easy, digestible way and what it can do for your organization or company. So I want to thank you for that. So I have one more poll question here for you. And this one, how many countries have COVID hubs and portals to respond, recover, provide awareness, prevention, and preparation? Okay, and thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and close this out and share the results on the screen. So it looks like, again, we haven't even split. 36% of you think over 90 countries and 36% of you over 120 countries. So the answer to this is over 90 countries. So over 90 countries have created COVID hub sites, and that's just what the Esri organization has cataloged. So there's probably many more out there that we haven't found yet. But again, goes to show you the power of information and visualizing that in easily digestible ways for public use. So again, we thank you for your participation. And Mark, I will go ahead and throw it back over to you to continue with the demos.
All right, thank you, Kelly. So thanks for your participation in that. And, as we mentioned, that dashboard went viral very quickly. And ultimately, as Kelly mentioned, there's been over 1.2 trillion views. This graphic actually shows you the first 3 months of feature requests that was coming from the dashboard's introduction. And just take a look at the scale of the vertical axes. 5 million is the top number up here. You could see it peaked a number of times at 4.5 million. This is the daily number of hits on that website. So if you look at each of the divisions, it's about 500 million requests. So it's 4.5 billion at the peak here in March. And we had a number of other peaks where it was hitting over 4 billion a day. So just phenomenal. Just to give you some reference on that, that's 4.5 billion people a day. The current world population is a little under 8 billion. So that's actually very phenomenal when you gauge it against that. So next, I want to move into some case studies and talk about disasters in general and how do we visualize the uncertain future with GIS, really for supporting better decision making in crises. And we all need to prepare and respond for disasters. I've got some examples up here, but flooding is obviously very common, and severe storm and rain events, severe weather events. We're having those here in the United States right now, but certainly Asia Pacific has been hit very hard with storms in the last few years. Earthquakes and volcanoes, as well as tsunamis, flooding, monsoons. You're all very familiar with those things, and increasingly wildfire. So it's a challenge for any nation to respond to these things, and geospatial authorities and their information from maps and data providers and from national government as well as private industry is really providing the data to allow us to visualize, analyze, and respond to these disasters. A great example is Ordnance Survey Great Britain. They've identified over 200 use cases for their data, including emergency response. And in fact, the survey has been critical in the UK government response to their extreme flooding events that have occurred over the last few years. This is actually underscored by the UK Geospatial Strategy, which was released by the UK Geospatial Commission, which is a cabinet level agency in the UK government. And it includes opportunity number 6, which is emergency response and harnessing data to save lives. The USGS here in the United States has a geospatial response team, and they produce an event support map for major disasters. And this can be found on a public access portion of their open data access page. And this is just one example of what they show. One of the ones they created an event support map for this MRCTI viewer. It provides imagery and information that supports the MRCTI, meaning is the Mayors for the Mississippi River Cities and Towns Initiative. And that viewer will help and helps in coordination, communication, and access of geospatial resources during disaster events. The viewer was built on the government geospatial platform. It's used by local communities along the Mississippi River. It was used in the flooding last year in 2020. Some of the situational awareness information that's shared there are stream gauge levels as for floods, weather forecasts, imagery access and comparison, and access to other agencies' tools. Here we see before and after imagery with a swipe tool. So there's many tools as well as information that's available on this very simple, easy to use portal. You know, GIS is more than just about visualization. It's about analysis, and more it's about AI and machine learning and automating the process. In this case, we see in a disaster identifying features as we go into this area that was hit by a hurricane in Florida, and identifying all of the buildings. The blue ones are the damaged buildings, and the red ones are the ones that were completely rendered uninhabitable. So we can quickly assess an area and do damage assessment on an area. I'm going to move now back to our COVID, because that's the current crisis that all of us are dealing with. So I want to show you some examples here, and later I'll show you resources you can use. Another way to look at this, in addition to Johns Hopkins dashboard, is we've taken some of that data and looked at how can we make that much easier to understand and assimilate very quickly. And this COVID trends, and by the way, I've put all of these links in the bottom of each of these slides. You can click on any of these links to find the things that I'm showing you very easily. And this webinar is being recorded, as Kelly mentioned, and it's available. It'll be available on the website later. So if you want to review it, or if you want to share it with friends and colleagues, all of those resources are there. So we can look at where is COVID-19 spreading? Where is it epidemic, which right now is a very large area? Where is it starting to be controlled? And eventually we're going to see where does it come to end of stage, which we're all looking forward to. We can also look at this at a finer granularity. In this case, in the United States, we're looking at those same trends: emergent, spreading, epidemic, and controlled and end stage. We're looking at it across the United States. And again, you can see we're using the Johns Hopkins data that they make open available. You can get that data yourself. And it's coming from many authoritative sources. Another way to look at this is graphically. We can think using the analogy of a medical pulse. We can look at where are things pulsing right now. I can look at them across countries. I can look at them across the United States. I can look at new cases per capita. I can look at deaths per capita. And I can look at cumulative cases. But I want to drill down. I live in California. I want to drill down to California. So I can get, this is not just a static map. This is a dynamic map with real data feeds, feeding this information into a dynamic live web map. And I can go and get information and look at things like, what are the weekly averages for new cases? What are the daily averages? And I can look at that for deaths. And again, I can look at the trend lines. And I think most importantly, we all see with the vaccines are here or on the horizon, depending on which country you're in. And so it's important to track where can I get that vaccine? And there are many vaccine locator applications that are out there. So this site doesn't just look at where are those sites in one app. This actually gives you access, in this case by state, so down at the administrative level 1, state or province level, where are those apps? And I want to be able to go look at each of those individual apps depending on what area I'm interested in. So I can look at vaccine metrics. I can look at vaccine location apps. So I've given you some ideas here, but I want you to see just live, and Kelly's going to take you through some of these demos. So Kelly, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, Mark. And you should be seeing my screen here with these websites for some of these hub sites.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So as you can see here, I'm on these live sites, some of these that Mark was mentioning in his examples. I have a very easy instructions up here. I'm simply going to select a state on the map and then open the appropriate tab to view the infographic. So I'm going to click OK. And as you can see, I have my interactive map here. I have my list of states. I happen to be looking at the United States right now. And again, this is just an index of all of the hub sites that Esri has indexed for COVID-19 and the responses. So I'm going to go ahead and select California because that's where I'm from and that's going to be the most relevant information to me. I see here that I'm going to go ahead and leave it on the first tab. This is information from the California Governor's Office of Emergency Planning. So immediately what I get here is an easy to read visual of some of the most important data. So I can see the total population of California, the median household size, the number of households, some important information about people with health insurance or no health insurance, the senior population count. So again, just some of the important information that I can easily view and see here in these graphs. If I continue to scroll down, I can see here the full planning report, population by age. So just different ways to visualize this data as a response to COVID-19 that the Governor's Office of California has put together. So now that I've looked at the state of California, I'm interested in Los Angeles County. Again, that's the most relevant information for me. So I'm going to go ahead and select the county. I see my interactive map has zoomed in there on Los Angeles. I can see on top here all of the hub sites that we've indexed. I'm going to go ahead and just leave it on this first one. This happens to be from Loma Linda University Health. And then I can view very easily, I've never left my window here, the Loma Linda University Coronavirus Response Hub. So this is all the information indexed by Loma Linda University. I can see here they've put together information on global confirmed cases, global death rates, the recovery rate, confirmed cases within the US, and then confirmed cases within the state of California. So as I scroll through, again, this is just an easy way for me to visualize this data. I can see what's important to me living in Los Angeles County. I can see how other counties are counting their data. And then I can also view some important and local resources that Loma Linda has already put together for me. So it's one area that I can go in and see all of this information and get the most relevant info for myself. So now that we've looked at that, I'm going to go ahead and take you through some examples of countries. So again, I'm looking at an index site here by country. So again, very easy instructions. I'm simply going to click on the country from my interactive map on the bottom left here, or from a list from the left panel. So I'm going to go ahead and select Ireland so we can take a look at that. So as you can see, my interactive map here, it's zoomed into the country of Ireland. I can see here that this is their COVID-19 health site. It's actually saying that they're redirecting me to their Ireland COVID-19 data hub. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. It redirects me here in my same window. So again, I'm not switching screens here. It's all easy to use information right within this index of sites. So now I'm looking at Ireland's COVID-19 data hub. I'm going to scroll down here. I can see exactly where this information is coming from, so I know that I'm getting the most authoritative resource of information. And this has all been created and built using the GeoHive platform, which is Ireland's geospatial data hub. So immediately I see here when this information was last updated, so it confirms to me again, I'm getting the most recent and accurate information. So now I can view here the total number of confirmed cases, deaths, their latest daily case rate, and again, all of this information updated as of March 1st. I can also see their new information on vaccination, so I can view those figures very easily. I can see when that has been last updated, so again, I know I'm getting an authoritative form of resource information. I can view in different charts here they've put together. So just different ways to visualize this data to make it easily digestible for people to view and read. I can see here we have a map of Ireland, so they've put together a 14-day incident rate per 100,000 population. And this I can see easily sourced from their national mapping agency, so I know, again, I'm getting authoritative information. So just one of the ways that different countries have been putting together their stats and information for people. So next I'm going to review some of the other COVID-19 sites. This is from our GIS hub. So as you saw, we just went through some local examples for the US by state and by county and by country. So what's interesting here is I'm going to now show you by city. So we're going to drill down to another level. I went ahead and selected here from the city of New Haven, and I have it open already, so it's loaded and ready. And this is just another example of their COVID-19 hub site. So again, easy ways that they can get this information out to the public. So I can visit the tab here for vaccination and testing information. I can easily see a tab for reporting positive cases, and then also for guidance documents and resources. So they have some videos here from the mayor. They've also put up front their data, local resources, pretty much anything I need to know if I live in the city of New Haven in easily visual, digestible ways. So now I'm going to go back to my index of sites here. We've already looked at some county government examples. Now I'm going to show you some examples of regional governments. So in this case, I'm going to look at the West Virginia COVID-19 Business Impact Site. So this is from the West Virginia Association of Regional Councils for COVID-19 Response. So if I were a business or if I owned a business and had an organization, this is where I would want to go to help to get the most information for my business as it impacts me. So as I can see, I can easily view here how to participate. If my business hours have been affected, I can go ahead and add my information to their data source by taking their survey. So they've made it very easy for me to do that. I can provide information of how COVID-19 has impacted my business. So again, they've made it very easy for me to give them that information. They let me know up front how that survey data is used, where it goes, who sees it, and what the data is going to be used for. Then they have an example here of the data that they have received. So again, an interactive map that I can look at for all of the impacts to businesses across West Virginia. And the last example I'm going to show you is for tribal governments. So this is an interesting case. We're going to look at the Navajo Nation. And I can see here the Navajo Nation has put together their hub site. What's interesting about this is the Navajo Nation spans 3 different states across the US. So they need to be able to get information from New Mexico, Arizona, and Utah in order to provide, again, relevant information that impacts their community. So they can easily do that because all of this is open source data. They've been reporting on global confirmed cases. They also here have separated out confirmed cases within the state of Arizona, within the state of Utah, and within the state of New Mexico. That way, depending on where their community members live, they can get one area where they can view all of that relevant information. They've also put together some neighboring state resources. So again, because their nation covers 3 different areas, they can easily provide that information for their community. And then they've also outlined some important resources from local health departments and the CDC. And that is those are all the examples I have here. So Mark, I will go ahead and turn it back over to you to continue with the presentation.
All right, great. Thank you, Kelly. Excellent presentation, and I think a good example of what we've been talking about. Can you see my PowerPoint?
Yes, we can.
All right. So I'd like to come back just for a minute to this crisis management life cycle and the key strategies. Now that you're familiar with this cycle and strategies, you can begin to consider where you might use them as you think about where you can deploy simple yet powerful apps to address your disasters or crises. Using this crisis management lifecycle strategies and continuing with this COVID-19 crisis as an example, we can apply GIS solutions and capabilities to provide location intelligence through the life cycle. Now, I'm not going to read all of these to you, but you can see that we've got many different COVID monitoring and response tools. As we start at the lower left, we can see there's a group of recovery dashboards and apps. We can see that there's awareness apps like workforce safety and location tracing. There's prevention using indoor apps for facility mapping and management, and readiness for resilience apps and hubs. I just want you to note that there are a collection of solutions and capabilities and systems for addressing disasters. In this case, it's addressing the COVID-19. There's dashboards, tools, portals, models, and that's just the beginning. And I'll come back to this in the end of our webinar. So we've got a chance to get some more feedback from you, our audience. We're interested. I'm going to turn it back over to Kelly to ask a couple of poll questions.
Okay, thank you, Mark. And these are our last two poll questions for our presentation today. So we just want to get some feedback from you. How are you using GIS in your organization's response to disasters like COVID? So are you providing base maps and or data to help visualize disaster impacts? Are you providing dashboards, portals, or hubs to inform and engage the public? You're using GIS to analyze, prevent, and prepare for future disasters. You do not currently use GIS in response at all, or you're just not sure. And I'm going to go ahead and close this out and share. So it looks like an overwhelming majority, 67% of you are providing base maps and or data to visualize those disaster impacts, with 33% of you providing dashboards and portals or hubs to inform and engage the public. You're using GIS to analyze, prevent, and prepare for future disasters, and 22% of you don't currently use GIS in your response to disasters. So again, thank you for your participation. I'm going to go ahead and throw up our last poll question here. So what location-based question do you need answered to get your organization back to normal? So we've all been affected by COVID-19 in many ways. So what questions do you need answers to? Is it situational awareness? You need something like dashboards, workforce readiness to work on site, in field, or in virtual environments, facility planning and readiness for staff return, supply network resilience, or you're just not sure. So it looks like, again, a majority of you are looking to get those situation awareness questions answered, and then it's split 40 and 40 on workforce readiness for on-site, in the field, or virtual environments, and then facility planning. So again, we appreciate your participation. And with that, Mark, I will go ahead and pass it back to you for our conclusion.
Great. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you for your participation in that. And I am going to pick up on some of your results. You mentioned situational awareness leading with dashboards, but also you mentioned workforce readiness and facility planning. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But first, many of the sites that Kelly showed you were hubs. And I want to take a minute and describe what we're referring to when we talk about a hub and why it's important. Hubs are engaging and interconnecting communities by bringing people together, by bringing people, organizations, and stakeholders together from across government, industry, academia, NGOs, and citizens. And it's really providing those information products that we've been looking at, like maps and apps and the data that drive those dynamic maps and survey information like we've just done. There really is they're really truly hubs for communities of interest. And you can take advantage of these. These communities can share information, but more than that, it can be used to engage communities around common issues, causes, and initiatives. ArcGIS Hub enables these communities to collaborate across and around initiatives using geospatial data, maps, apps, dashboards. This is really evolving data sharing into collaboration with communities, using geospatial information to inform decision making. So let's look at how this can be used in a current crisis with government and business continuity. So I picked 4 use cases, and I think they're going to be relevant based on your survey results. So we're going to look at business recovery, workforce readiness, and facility status. Those were 2 things that you mentioned in their survey results. And then we're going to look at supply network resilience. So the first use case is business continuity and recovery. And you can see we've got dashboards for visualizing, which many of you said that you were contributing to, which is great. It really brings value to your users and customers. But we can also look at applying geospatial analysis and looking at things like suitability analysis. And site location. Another use case is our workforce status and readiness, which was a second on our survey results there. And so how do we use a very simple app that's on a mobile device? We have something called Survey 123 that allows your workers to answer some very simple questions, and it's aggregated up into a dashboard that you can use for looking at workforce status and readiness to return back to work. All of this can be covered by privacy concerns. So it's only revealed, the person's identity is only revealed if they elect to make that available to their employer, or however otherwise it might be used. Now, those workers need to go back. Once it's safe for them to go back, they need to go to a safe workplace. And so we need to understand the status of our facilities and our locations, and what level of readiness are those operations in. So we want to look at our facility status reports, and we want to look at density inside using indoor mapping to look at density and keep those 6-foot distances. And we want to be able to route people. Maybe they're going to route a little differently to keep a social distance. And all that can be monitored on a situational dashboard, similar to what many of you may already be using. And the last use case is supply network and looking at dependencies and resilience. And I've got a friend of mine that was very much impacted by this. He had to move all of his manufacturing location to another country to continue his operations. So looking at that global awareness, the situational awareness that many of you said you're involved in, but also where are the incidents happening in real time? Again, these are dynamic maps, not static maps. And so we can get a sense of where are our network dependencies and where is our flow of goods and resources. So hubs really enable us to engage and interconnect with our communities. And sorry for that repeat. And then I wanted to show you, lastly, I'm going to end on, okay, how do you get started? How do these do-it-yourself resources? So I've given you these links again in here. We can see the COVID-19 GIS hub, and I'll show you that in a minute. And there's also an Esri community, or an Esri GeoNet community of users that are sharing ideas and solutions. And you can be part of that community. It helps you can learn how to run models, things like hospital models and hospital bed and ICU models. And you can also get assistance. If you are just challenged and you are in a disaster, Esri runs a regular disaster response program where we can provide support. And you can also get maps and data sets and applications and best practices. So some of the resources I'll show you here, COVID-19 is an example. We've got maps, we've got data sets. Kelly showed you some of these applications that you can use, applications and dashboards, and data sets. Data sets that have been explored by the GIS community at large and by trusted partners. And we've tried to put the best of breed here. And you can view many other resources there. Also, I've put some links in here specifically for your return to work strategies. How do you open up your workplace, reopen your workplace with facilities? There's some links there. And there's our National Mapping and Charting Industry website. We also have a GeoNet site for the National Geospatial Mapping and Charting. And then there's the ArcGIS Hub and the dashboards and story maps that we mentioned. There's all links there for you to look at these. And lastly, I want to point to the UN Global Geospatial Information Management, or the UN-GGIM Working Group on Geospatial Information and Services for Disasters. That framework was passed the UN-GGIM Committee of Experts, which I'm involved in and support since the beginning. And they passed a resolution that went up to the UN Economic and Social Council, which is the highest level at the UN of councils. There's that in the National Security Council in July of 2018. And it's all based on the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk and Reduction, which was endorsed by the UN General Assembly in June of 2015. So I'm going to skip for time because I want to make sure there's time for questions. You already saw some of the demos from Kelly, and I was just going to go through some of those. We went through some of the apps, and actually this is just for COVID-19. We have these same apps for many different disasters, for flooding, for hurricanes and cyclones, typhoons, earthquakes. So many different tools that you can apply to that crisis management life cycle. And with that, I want to open it up to questions. I think that some of you, I think we've got a question here, and I'm going to pop that out.
Yeah, I'll like
You know,
see here, and it may need some clarification. Is this data coming from layer attributes showing with different graphics? So I wasn't sure if in what that was referenced to. So if Muhammad, if you want to clarify your question there, we can try our best to answer that in the webinar, or we can follow up with you later in an email.
yeah, let me see if I can take that because I think it's to the point. Some of the things that Kelly was showing and some of the things I was talking about, the different graphics are being generated by authoritative information in most cases, or at least curated information, and it's based on that digital data and the attributes of that data, which can be in layers, and the attributes are parts of the features in those layers, and that's used to generate the maps and graphs that you saw on the dashboards and in some of the websites that Kelly showed you. So I think that answered that question. If not, Mohammed, like Kelly said, please just put some more detail in, and we'll be happy to follow up now or later on. So thank you, and everyone have a great day. And with that, Kelly, is there anything you want to add?
No, I think you covered everything, Mark. Yeah, the webinar recording, again, we'll make all of those resources available to everyone in a follow-up email. So that will be sending out to the same email that you registered with for the webinar.
All right. And with that, we thank you.
All right, thank you.